Easy now. I've got you.
Wait! I'm coming!
He's not hurt bad. Wheel caught a rut. My fault. Pushed him too long past dark. He was tired, I knew it. Easy, Cinder. Easy now. There now. Easy, Cinder.
I've been hurt before. I'll be off your land inside the hour.
Elias! You'll do no such thing with that arm open. There's a barn. There's coffee.
You don't know me. No.
But I know a weary horse and a long, cold night coming. Come up to the house, mister.
The wagon lay on its side at the bottom of the ridge, one wheel still turning slow against the autumn sky, and the man who crawled out from under it did not cry for help. He only knelt in the dust and pressed both hands to the horse pinned in the traces, whispering something no one could hear. Ruth Calloway saw him from her porch a quarter-mile off, saw the way he worked the buckles instead of saving himself first, and something in her chest she had kept shut for 2 years came loose. Her husband had been dead that long. The farm was failing that fast. And here was a stranger, ruined on the road below her land. And the first thing he thought of was the animal. "Wait," she called, already running. "Wait, I'm coming." She reached him with her skirts full of burrs and her breath ragged. Up close he was younger than the gray at his temples suggested, maybe 33, with a jaw shadowed by 3 days' travel and eyes that flinched when she got near, the way a dog flinches that has been struck for coming to the table. The horse was a black gelding, lathered and trembling, and the man had already gotten 2 of the straps free. "He's not hurt bad," the stranger said, not looking up. "Wheel caught a rut. My fault. I was pushing him too long past dark last night, and he was tired this morning, and I knew it." He said it plainly, the way a man confesses a thing he cannot forgive himself for. "Easy, Cinder. Easy now." Ruth got her shoulder under the animal's flank, and together they brought him up, and the gelding stood shaking on all 4 legs, sound. Only then did the man look at his own arm, where a long tear in his sleeve was going dark at the edges. "You're bleeding," she said. "I've bled before." He got to his feet. He was tall, and he stooped a little, as though he had spent years making himself smaller in rooms where he was not wanted. "Ma'am, I'm obliged. I'll get him hitched and be off your land inside the hour." "You'll do no such thing with your arm open like that." Ruth heard her own voice, steady and certain, and was surprised by it. She had not been certain of anything in a long while. "There's a barn. There's coffee. Whatever your business is down the road, it'll keep till you're stitched." He hesitated, and in that hesitation, she saw the whole shape of him. A man braced for the word no, so used to it that yes made him uneasy. "You don't know me," he said. "No," she agreed. "But I know a wagon on its side, and a hurt horse, and a long cold night coming. Come up to the house, mister." "Elias," he said. "Elias Ward. Ruth Calloway. That's my girl on the porch, watching us and pretending she isn't." Up at the house, the porch step was broken. Had been broken since spring. The middle board had gone soft and split, and every soul who climbed it had learned to skip it or trust the give. And Ruth had meant to fix it the way she meant to fix the ridgepole and the fence and the whole slow collapse of a place built for 2 hands and now held by 1. Elias looked at that step for a long moment while she fetched needle and thread. Her daughter Sarah was 7 and had the particular boldness of a child who has decided the grief in a house is her job to lift. She planted herself in front of the stranger, with a biscuit held out in both hands like an offering to a saint. "It's got molasses," she informed him. "I saved it from breakfast. You can have it because you saved your horse. Mama says a man who's good to his animals is good all the way down." Elias took the biscuit as though it might break in his fingers. "Your mama said that." She says a lot of things about people. She was right about the peddler, and she was right about the school teacher, and she was wrong about Mr. Foss, but only a little. Sarah tipped her head. "Are you going to stay?" The last man who came to fix things stayed one day and took a chicken. "Sarah," Ruth said, "I'm only telling him the truth of it. I don't take chickens," Elias said gravely, and something in the child's certainty seemed to work loose a knot in him. That's a promise, if you'll have it." "I'll have it," said Sarah, and shook his hand. Once, businesslike, and went back to her post at the rail. While Ruth stitched his arm at the kitchen table, 6 stitches, her hands sure from years of mending everything a farm can tear, she watched him take the measure of her house. He saw the empty pegs where a man's coats should hang. He saw the account book left open to a column of red figures she was too tired to close. He saw the water stain on the ceiling spreading like a bruise where the roof had begun to fail. He said nothing about any of it, but when she tied off the last stitch and he stood to go, he stopped at the door, looking back at that broken step. "I've got a horseshoe in my kit," he said. "Bent one. No good for the foot. I could shim that step. It'd hold you till frost anyway. An hour's work. Won't cost you a thing but the daylight." "You've a road to be on," Ruth said. The road'll wait an hour. He would not meet her eyes when he said it, as if a kindness offered were a kind of trespass. A step like that breaks an ankle. You've a girl running up and down it. So she let him, and that was the first day. He shimmed the step with the bent horseshoe wedged tight beneath the soft board, and it held, and he slept that night in the barn beside Cinder, though she'd offered the spare room. And in the gray of the next morning, she found him already up on the barn roof, laying back the shakes that had blown loose in the September storms. He had not asked. He had simply seen the thing that needed doing and set his hands to it. When she called him down to breakfast, he came slow, wiping his palms, watching her face for the moment she would decide he had overstepped and send him off. She did not send him off. She poured him coffee, and she said, "There's a week of work here for a man who's willing. I can't pay but in meals and a roof. It isn't much. It isn't near what the work is worth." "It's more than I'm owed," Elias said, and she did not understand him then. The week became 2. The autumn gold came down over the Kansas grass, the cottonwoods along the creek turning the color of old coins, and the farm that had been dying began, quietly, to live. He mended the fence line the cattle had pushed through. He dug the potatoes before the ground could harden. He taught Sarah to whittle a whistle from a green willow branch, the two of them sitting on the mended step in the long evenings, and Ruth would stand at the window with a dish rag going still in her hands, listening to her daughter laugh a laugh she had not heard since the fever took her father. He never saddled Cinder to leave. She noticed that. Each morning she half expected to find the black gelding saddled and the man gone with a note if she was lucky, and without one if she was not, the way men passed through this country and out of it. But the saddle stayed on its peg in the barn, and Cinder grazed the near pasture, and Elias stayed. She stopped listening for hoofbeats in the night. She did not let herself examine why. The ridgepole was the great thing, the thing beyond one man or one woman. The main beam of the barn roof, cracked through in the storm, sagging lower each week. And when it went, it would take the whole roof and every ounce of hay she needed to winter the stock. She had lain awake over that ridgepole for a month, counting what she did not have. Elias looked at it one morning, standing in the barn's cool dark with his hat pushed back, and said, "That's a 2-man job and a full day. Maybe 2 days. You'd need a new beam cut and raised, and it's heavy, dangerous work." He paused. "I can do it, but I'll want your word on something first." "What word?" "That when it's done, and the roof's sound, and the winters provided against, you'll not feel you owe me a thing. That I did it because it wanted doing, and I had the hands." He looked at her, direct for once, and the flinch in him was gone, replaced by something harder and more sorrowful. "I've had folks feel they owed me. It goes bad in the end. I'd rather do a thing free or not at all." "You're a strange man, Elias Ward. You don't know the half of it," he said quietly, and turned to measure the beam. He felled a straight cottonwood by the creek and hewed it square over 3 days, and the raising of it was the hardest labor Ruth had done since her husband died. The 2 of them and a block and tackle, and Sarah holding the mule's head steady, all of them shouting and straining, while the great beam swung up, and Elias, 30 feet in the air on the crossbeam with his stitched arm surely screaming, guided it home into the notch with his bare hands and drove the pins. When it was seated and sound, the whole roof squared true above them, he came down the ladder slow and stood in the barn looking up at what they had made, and Ruth saw that his hands were shaking and his eyes were wet. and it was not from the pain. "It's been a long time," he said, to no one, "since I built a thing instead of leaving one behind." She did not ask what he meant. There would be time, she thought. That was her mistake. To think there would be time before the town had its say. Because the town had already begun to talk. She'd felt it the previous Sunday, the way the pews went quiet when she came in with a strange man's help mending her farm. The way Reverend Coyle's eyes had followed Elias down the aisle and out again. She had told herself she imagined it. She had told herself a great many comfortable things. It was the fourth Sunday when Reverend Coyle came to the farm himself. His black buggy pulling up in the yard at midday with 2 of the deacons riding behind. And Ruth knew from the set of the man's shoulders that the talking was done and the reckoning had come. Elias was up on the barn roof, laying the last of the new shakes. He came down when he saw the buggy. He did not run. He stood in the yard with his hat in his hands, and his face gone still and gray, as a man who has heard a particular knock on a particular door many times before. "Mrs. Calloway," the Reverend said, not unkindly, which was somehow worse. "I've come on a hard errand. There's a thing being said in town, and it's my place to bring it to you plain, rather than let it fester. This man," he nodded at Elias without looking at him. "There's word come up from Abilene, from a drover who knew him there. Elias Ward. They say he killed a man. They say he was in the territorial prison 3 years for it and walked out this spring. They say wherever he lands, trouble follows, and I'd not be doing right by you and your girl if I let you keep him under your roof without knowing the manner of man he is." The yard went very quiet. Sarah had come to the porch and stood on the mended step with her small hand gripping the rail. The autumn wind moved through the gold cottonwoods, and somewhere a crow called and was answered. Ruth turned to Elias. She waited for him to speak, to deny it, to give her the word she could stand on, and Elias said nothing. He looked at the ground. He looked at his own scarred hands, and he did not defend himself at all. "Is it true," Ruth said, "that you were in prison?" "Yes," said Elias. "For killing a man?" A long breath. "Yes." The Reverend spread his hands as if the matter were settled, as if the word "yes" were the whole of a man. "You see, Mrs. Calloway, I'll take him off your hands directly. There's no need for—" "No," Ruth said. The word came out of her, the way it had come out of her that first day on the ridge. Steady, certain, from the shut place that had come loose. She stepped down off her porch. She walked across her own yard in her mended boots, and she stood beside Elias Ward, close, so that no one watching could mistake where she had chosen to stand. "This man," she said, "raised my ridgepole with his bare hands, so my stock won't freeze this winter. This man mended the step my daughter runs on so she won't break her neck. He's dug my potatoes and mended my fence and asked for nothing. Not one coin, not one favor, and he told me plain, the first hour I met him, that I didn't know him and shouldn't trust him. A wicked man doesn't warn you off himself, Reverend. A wicked man takes." Her voice did not shake. "You've told me what a drover says he did. You've not told me what he did. And until a man will tell me his own self, with his own mouth, I'll judge him by the roof over my head and the laughter in my child, and not by the talk of Abilene. Now that's my word, and it's my land, and I'll thank you to drive back down it." The Reverend looked at her a long moment. He was not a cruel man, only a frightened one. Frightened for his flock the way she was fierce for her child, and perhaps he saw that in her. He put on his hat. "The town will have opinions," he said. "The town always does," said Ruth. "It never once brought me a sack of flour when I was starving. Good day." They drove off. The dust settled, and Elias Ward stood in the yard and looked at the woman who had defended a man she did not know against her own good name, and the hard line of his jaw loosened and did not come back, and his eyes filled and did not spill, and he had to turn his face to the fence a moment before he could speak at all. That night he found her on the porch after Sarah was abed, and he sat down on the mended step below her, and he set his hat aside, and the lantern hung on its nail hissed and guttered between them in the cold, and he told her. "I'll tell you now," he said, "because you earned it, and because you should be able to send me off knowing what you're sending. Then you can decide with the whole truth in your hand, instead of half of it. He rolled up his left sleeve, past the healed stitches she'd sewn, and there in the lantern light was a scar she had never seen. A long white ridge running from wrist to elbow, old and deep. I had a brother, younger, wild. He fell in with a man in Abilene who dealt cards crooked and worse besides, a man who beat a girl half to death for talking to the marshal. My brother went to make it right and got himself in over his head, and the man drew on him in the street, and I stepped in front of it. He touched the scar. This is where the knife went before the gun did. We fought. The gun went off between us, and when it was done, the man was dead, and my brother was clear, and there was only me, standing over the body with the knife in my own arm, and no witness who'd speak for a drifter over a man with money in that town. The lantern hissed. The wind moved wide and cold across the dark fields. I never said it wasn't me. I never said self-defense, because to prove it, I'd have had to put my brother in that street, and he had a wife coming and a life to make, and I had nothing but the road. So I took the 3 years. I let them think what they think, and when I came out this spring, he'd made his life, good and clean, and he never has to know what it cost, and that's how I want it. Elias looked up at her. I killed a man, Ruth. That much is true, and I'll not soften it. But I did it saving my brother's life, and I did my time for it. And I have never in my life taken a thing that wasn't given, nor raised my hand to a soul who didn't draw first. That's the whole of it. Now you know the manner of man under your roof. Ruth was quiet a long while. When she spoke, her voice was gentle. You let a whole town believe the worst of you to save a brother who'll never thank you for it. He thanks me by living well. That's thanks enough. Pa used to set the posts, she said, unexpectedly, looking out at the fence line silver in the moonlight. He'd say a fence is only as honest as the man who sets it, that a post pulled crooked to save an hour's work will fail you the year you need it most. And it's the same with people. You can't judge a fence by the paint. You have to pull on it and see if it holds. She looked down at him on her step. You've held, Elias. Every day you've held. I don't care what Abilene says. I know what my own hands have leaned on. He did not reach for her. That was not the manner of man he was, and it was not the season for it yet. But he bowed his head, and she laid her hand for one moment on his shoulder, and that was more than any word. The town did not forgive so easily. Through the last of the autumn, the looks stayed cold, the pews stayed quiet, and Ruth felt the weight of it, the way you feel weather coming in your bones. But something was shifting under the surface, the way a river works beneath ice. Old Joel Prentice, whose land bordered hers to the north, a hard, silent widower who had not spoken 20 words to her since her husband died, began to watch. First, he only watched, from his own fence line, from the road, taking the measure of the man who had raised the Calloway ridgepole. Then one day in October, he stopped at the gate and asked, gruff, about the post and beam work, how Elias had notched the joint, whether it would hold the snow load. Elias walked him through it plain, one working man to another, no defense in it, no plea. Joel grunted and rode on. And then, near November, Joel Prentice came to the gate a third time, and this time he took off his hat, and he said, My barn's got the same rot in the ridge. I'm too old to raise a beam alone, and too poor to hire it. If you'd lend a hand, Ward, I'd count it a favor and stand you a dinner, and I'd say so in town, where it'd do you some good. That was the thaw. It came slow, as thaws do, one hard heart at a time. It did not come for everyone. Deacon Harmon, who had ridden behind the Reverend that fourth Sunday, went on crossing the road when he saw Elias in town, and there were others behind him, men who had made up their minds and were too proud to unmake them. Ruth learned to live with the cold shoulders the way she'd learned to live with the wind. Not every fence holds. Some you pull on and they fail you, and you learn which ones. That was the truth of people too. The reckoning came with the first frost, and it came in a form Ruth never looked for. Her hay was in, thanks to the sound roof, but her account book was still a column of red, the mortgage note folded and refolded in her apron pocket until the paper had gone soft as cloth, and the day it fell due, she had not enough, and knew it, and knew what came after. The auction, the road, the losing of the only ground her daughter had ever stood on. She sat at the kitchen table with the soft note in her hands, and did not cry. because she was past it. And then the wagons came up the road. She heard them first, many wheels, many hooves, and went to the door thinking the bank had come early to take it all. But it was not the bank. It was Joel Prentice in the lead, and behind him a good part of the county, wagons loaded with the last of their own harvest, sacks of grain and smoked meat and jars put up for winter, and folk climbing down into her yard who had not spoken to her in 2 years. Not all the county. She marked the gaps in the line, the families still holding their doubts, Deacon Harmon's place among them. But more had come than had stayed away. Joel came to the porch with his hat in his hands. "Ward raised my barn," he said. "Wouldn't take a cent for it. Then he raised the Hollis barn and dug out the widow Pharaoh's well when it caved, and never once asked a thing. A man showed us all summer what he is by what he does, and some of us were too busy listening to Abilene to look with our own eyes." He set a heavy envelope in her hands, and it was not soft. It was thick. "It's the note, most of it, and some over for seed. From those of us that could spare it and mean to spare more. Not everybody's come around, and I'll not pretend they have. But a man that good to his neighbors, the neighbors that have sense, ought to be half as good back. That's all. That's the whole of it." Ruth stood on her porch step, the solid new timber Elias had laid the week before, the bent horseshoe long since set aside on the barn wall like a keepsake of a leaner time, and she could not speak. She looked across the yard to where Elias stood among the horses, hat in hand, and she saw on his face the look of a man who has spent his whole life braced for the word no, and has finally, in the middle of a Kansas autumn, been handed the word yes by more folk at once than he'd ever thought would say it. He crossed the yard to her. Sarah came running and caught his hand, and he held it. And Ruth understood that he was not going to saddle Cinder ever again, that the black gelding would grow old and fat in her near pasture, that the man who had spent years leaving things behind had, without a word of asking, been kept. "You know," she said, low, so only he could hear, "there's no fixing that column of red in one winter. There's years of hard work in this place yet. It isn't much I've got to offer a man. It isn't near what he'd be worth. It's more than I'm owed," said Elias Ward, and this time she understood him. He never made a speech of it. He was not that manner of man. But that evening, when the wagons had gone and the yard was quiet and the first snow of the year came down soft and slow over the gold-gone gray of the Kansas grass, he sat on the solid porch step with Sarah leaning warm against his side and Ruth beside him, and he said the only thing that needed saying, quiet, watching the flakes settle on the fence posts her father had set true. "I thought I'd used up all my chances a long way back down the road. I thought a man only gets found young or not at all." Ruth watched the snow fall on the mended, living farm. "No," she said. "It's never too late to be found. Not for anyone. Not ever." He didn't answer. He only reached over, in the falling dark, and took her hand, and held it, the way he held every good thing now, like he'd finally learned it wasn't going to be taken away. The snow came down over the barn with its sound new ridgepole, over the pasture where the black horse stood unsaddled, over the porch step made solid at last, and 3 people sat in the quiet and were warm.